What if I told you that the difference between those who achieve extraordinary success and those who remain stuck in mediocrity isn't talent, luck, or even hard work? What if the real difference lies in something far more fundamental? Something that happens between your ears every single day, every single moment. The truth is, successful people don't just act differently. They think differently. Their minds operate on a completely different frequency. Processing information, making decisions, and viewing the world through a lens that most people never discover. This isn't about positive thinking or motivation. This is about rewiring your brain to think like someone who consistently creates the results they want in life. Right now, as you listen to this, your brain is running on automatic programs, thought patterns that were installed years ago by your environment, your experiences, and the people around you. Most of these programs are keeping you exactly where you are, creating the same results over and over again. But what if you could upgrade that mental software? What if you could think like the most successful people who have ever lived? Today, you're going to discover the 15 core thinking patterns that separate winners from everyone else. These aren't theories or concepts. These are the actual mental frameworks that billionaires, world-class athletes, innovative leaders, and breakthrough achievers use every single day. By the end of this journey, you'll have the blueprint to transform not just how you think, but how you live. Chapter 1. Think impossibilities, not limitations. The first and most fundamental difference between successful people and everyone else is how they perceive reality itself. While most people look at the world and see what's impossible, what's difficult, or what can't be done, successful people have trained their minds to see what's possible, what opportunities exist, and what could be created. This isn't about blind optimism or ignoring reality. This is about understanding that your brain is a pattern recognition machine. And whatever patterns you train it to look for, it will find more of. When you consistently focus on limitations, your brain becomes an expert at spotting them everywhere. It filters out opportunities, minimizes possibilities, and keeps you trapped in a narrow view of what's achievable. Successful people understand that limitations are often illusions created by conventional thinking. They've learned to question assumptions that others take for granted. When someone says, "That's impossible," a successful person immediately asks, "Impossible for whom?" When faced with a challenge, instead of immediately thinking about why it can't be done, they start with the assumption that there must be a way and their job is to find it. Consider how Jeff Bezos thought when he started Amazon. The conventional wisdom said that people would never buy books online because they wanted to touch and feel them first. Instead of accepting this limitation, Bezos focused on the possibilities. What if you could offer millions more titles than any physical store? What if you could deliver books faster and cheaper? What if you could provide better information and reviews than any bookstore clerk? He saw possibilities where others saw limitations, and that mental shift created one of the world's most valuable companies. The same pattern appears everywhere you look at success. When the Wright brothers were told that human flight was impossible, they focused on the possibility that it simply hadn't been solved yet. When Steve Jobs was told that people didn't want to carry around 1,000 songs in their pocket, he focused on the possibility that they just didn't know they wanted it yet. To develop this thinking pattern, you need to become aware of your automatic limitation finding mechanism. Most people's brains are constantly scanning for problems, obstacles, and reasons why things won't work. This was useful when we lived in caves, and survival was the primary concern. But in today's world, this mental habit is a success killer. Start by catching yourself when you immediately jump to limitations. When someone presents an idea or when you're considering a goal, notice if your first reaction is to think about all the reasons it won't work. Instead, force yourself to spend the first few minutes thinking about how it could work. What would need to be true for this to be possible? What resources, skills, or strategies could make this happen? What examples exist of similar things that have been accomplished? This doesn't mean ignoring real constraints or being unrealistic about challenges. Successful people are actually more realistic than unsuccessful people because they see both the possibilities and the obstacles clearly. The difference is in the order of their thinking. They start with possibilities and then figure out how to navigate the obstacles rather than starting with obstacles and using them as excuses to quit before they start. Train your brain to ask different questions. Instead of "why won't this work?" ask "how could this work?" Instead of "what if I fail?" ask "what if I succeed beyond my wildest expectations?" Instead of "I don't have enough resources," ask "how can I be resourceful with what I have and how can I attract the resources I need?" The most successful people in history weren't necessarily the smartest or most talented. They were the ones who could see possibilities that others couldn't see. They understood that the world is full of opportunities waiting to be discovered by minds that are trained to look for them. Every limitation you accept is permanent as a door you're choosing to keep locked. Every impossibility you embrace is a future you're deciding to give up on. Remember, successful people aren't successful because they had fewer obstacles. They're successful because they saw more possibilities for overcoming those obstacles. They understood that limitations are often just puzzles waiting to be solved. And their job was to become expert puzzle solvers. Chapter 2. Focus on what you can control. One of the most critical mental shifts that separates successful people from everyone else is their laser focus on controllable factors versus uncontrollable circumstances. While most people waste enormous amounts of mental energy worrying about, complaining about, or trying to change things completely outside their influence, successful people have learned to channel all their attention and effort into the areas where they actually have power. This principle sounds simple, but it's one of the hardest to master because our brains are naturally drawn to focus on external factors that affect us but that we cannot directly influence. We obsess over what other people think, what the economy is doing, what our competition is up to, or what might happen in the future. This mental habit is not just unproductive, it's actively destructive because it creates a sense of powerlessness and victimhood that kills initiative and confidence. Successful people understand that there are only 3 things you can truly control in any situation: your thoughts, your actions, and your responses. Everything else, no matter how important it seems, is outside your direct influence. This doesn't mean these external factors don't matter. It means that the only way to influence them is through controlling what you can control. Think about how professional athletes handle this principle. They can't control the weather, the referee's calls, their opponent's performance, or even their own natural talent level. But they can control their preparation, their effort, their attitude, and their response to whatever happens during the game. The most successful athletes are the ones who put 100% of their focus on these controllable factors, while less successful athletes waste mental energy worrying about everything else. The same pattern applies in business. You can't control market conditions, economic downturns, what your competitors do, or whether customers initially like your product. But you can control how hard you work, how much you learn, how you respond to feedback, how you treat your customers, and how quickly you adapt when things don't go as planned. Successful entrepreneurs obsess over these controllable factors while their unsuccessful counterparts spend their time complaining about external circumstances. This focus on controllables creates a powerful psychological effect. When you concentrate your mental energy on things you can actually influence, you start to see results. These results build confidence, which leads to better decisions, and more action, which creates better results. It becomes a positive cycle where your sense of personal power grows stronger over time. Conversely, when you focus on uncontrollables, you create a negative cycle. You worry about things you can't change, which makes you feel powerless, which leads to less action and worse decisions, which creates worse results, which makes you feel even more powerless. This is why many people feel stuck and frustrated despite working hard. They're working hard on the wrong things. To develop this thinking pattern, you need to become ruthless about distinguishing between controllable and uncontrollable factors in every situation. When you face a challenge or opportunity, Immediately sort all the relevant factors into two lists. What you can control and what you cannot control. Then consciously decide to invest your mental and emotional energy only in the controllable column. For example, if you're worried about your career, separate the controllable factors like your skills, your network, your attitude, your effort, and your job search strategy from the uncontrollable factors like the job market, your company's policies or economic conditions. Put all your energy into improving your skills, expanding your network, maintaining a positive attitude, working harder, and refining your strategy. Accept the economic conditions as they are, and focus on positioning yourself to succeed regardless of external circumstances. This doesn't mean being passive about external factors. It means understanding that the only way to influence them is indirectly through your controllable actions. You can't control whether people like you, but you can control how valuable you make yourself to them. You can't control market conditions, but you can control how prepared you are to take advantage of opportunities when they arise. Successful people also understand that taking responsibility for controllable factors includes taking responsibility for how they respond to uncontrollable events. You can't control what happens to you, but you can always control what you do about what happens to you. This shift from victim thinking to responsibility thinking is one of the most powerful mental transformations you can make. The most successful people in any field are those who have developed an almost obsessive focus on what they can control. Combined with a Zen-like acceptance of what they cannot control, they don't waste energy fighting reality. They invest energy creating the reality they want within the constraints that exist. Chapter 3. See failure as feedback, not finality. Perhaps no thinking pattern separates successful people from unsuccessful people more dramatically than their relationship with failure. While most people view failure as a verdict on their abilities, a source of shame, or a reason to quit, successful people have completely reframed failure as valuable information that guides them towards success. This mental shift is not just about staying positive after setbacks. It's about fundamentally changing what failure means to you. For unsuccessful people, failure is personal evidence that they're not good enough, smart enough, or capable enough. For successful people, failure is impersonal data about what approaches don't work, what assumptions were incorrect, or what skills need to be developed. The most successful entrepreneurs, athletes, inventors, and leaders in history are also the people who have failed the most. This isn't a coincidence. They failed more because they attempted more and they learned to extract maximum value from each failure, turning their setbacks into setups for future success. Consider Thomas Edison's approach to inventing the light bulb. He reportedly failed over 1,000 times before finding a filament that worked. When asked about these failures, he famously said he didn't fail 1,000 times. He found 1,000 ways that didn't work. This wasn't just clever wordplay. It represented a completely different mental framework for processing setbacks. Each failure brought him closer to success because it eliminated one possibility and provided information about what to try next. Modern entrepreneurs demonstrate this same pattern. Sarah Blakely, the founder of Spanx, credits her success to her father's unusual approach to failure. Every night at dinner, he would ask his children about their failures that day. And if they hadn't failed at anything, he would be disappointed. This taught her that failure wasn't something to avoid, but something to pursue because it meant she was trying new things and learning. The key to developing this thinking pattern is to separate your identity from your results. When you tie your self-worth to your outcomes, failure becomes a personal attack on who you are as a person. When you understand that you are not your results, failure becomes simply information about what happened, not a statement about who you are. Successful people have learned to ask different questions when they encounter setbacks. Instead of "Why does this always happen to me?" they ask, "What can I learn from this?" Instead of "I'm such a failure," they think this approach failed. Instead of "I should just quit," they wonder, "What would I do differently next time?" This reframing process turns every failure into a learning laboratory. Each setback becomes a chance to gather data, test assumptions, refine strategies, and build resilience over time. This creates a massive competitive advantage because while others are paralyzed by the fear of failure, successful people are actively using failure as a tool for improvement. The feedback mindset also changes how you take risks. When failure is devastating, you naturally avoid situations where failure is possible. This keeps you trapped in your comfort zone where growth is minimal. When failure is simply feedback, you become much more willing to try new approaches, take calculated risks, and push beyond your current limitations. To implement this thinking pattern, start treating every disappointment, setback, or failure as a source of valuable information. When something doesn't go as planned, immediately shift into learning mode. Ask yourself, what assumptions did I make that turned out to be wrong? What skills do I need to develop? What would I do differently if I could try again? What did this experience teach me about myself, my approach, or my environment? Create a failure resume alongside your regular resume. Document your significant failures and, more importantly, what you learned from each one. This practice will train your brain to automatically look for lessons in setbacks rather than reasons to feel bad about yourself. Remember that every expert in every field was once a beginner who made countless mistakes. The difference between experts and beginners isn't that experts don't fail. It's that experts have learned to fail forward. They've developed the mental skill of extracting maximum learning from minimum success and maximum growth from maximum setbacks. Successful people understand that failure is not the opposite of success. It's a stepping stone to success. They know that the path to mastery is paved with mistakes. And their job is not to avoid those mistakes, but to make them as quickly and cheaply as possible while extracting maximum learning from each one. Chapter 4. Think systematically about goals. One of the most distinctive characteristics of successful people is how they approach goal setting and achievement. While most people set vague aspirations or hope for better outcomes, successful people think in terms of systems, processes, and strategic frameworks that make success predictable rather than accidental. The difference between successful and unsuccessful people isn't that successful people set bigger goals. It's that they think more systematically about how to achieve those goals. They understand that goals are not achieved through motivation and willpower alone, but through the design and implementation of systems that make desired outcomes inevitable. Most people focus on the goal itself. Losing weight, making more money, finding a better relationship, or starting a business. Successful people focus on the system that produces the goal, the daily habits that create health, the skills and strategies that generate income, the personal development that attracts better relationships, or the processes that build sustainable businesses. This systematic thinking starts with breaking down large goals into smaller manageable components. Instead of saying "I want to be successful," a successful person defines exactly what success means in measurable terms, identifies the key factors that contribute to that type of success, and then creates specific action plans for improving each factor. For example, if the goal is to build $1 million business, systematic thinking would break this down into revenue targets, customer acquisition numbers, product development milestones, and operational benchmarks. Each of these areas would then be broken down further into daily and weekly actions that compound over time to create the desired result. Successful people also think in terms of leading indicators versus lagging indicators. Lagging indicators are the results you want, the money in your bank account, the weight on the scale, or the size of your business. Leading indicators are the activities that create those results, the sales calls you make, the workouts you complete, or the products you develop. While most people obsess over lagging indicators, successful people focus on leading indicators because those are what they can directly control. This systematic approach extends to time management and priority setting. Successful people don't just work hard, they work systematically. They identify the 20% of activities that produce 80% of their results, and they design their schedules around maximizing time spent on these high-impact activities. They understand that being busy is not the same as being effective, and effectiveness comes from systematic focus on what matters most. Successful people also build systems for learning and skill development. They don't just hope to get better at important skills. They create structured approaches for improvement. They seek out mentors, invest in training, practice deliberately, and track their progress systematically. They understand that skill development, like goal achievement, is not accidental but the result of systematic effort applied consistently over time. Another key aspect of systematic thinking is building redundancy and backup plans. Successful people don't just have one strategy for achieving their goals. They have multiple pathways to success. They anticipate potential obstacles and create contingency plans. They diversify their approaches so that if one method doesn't work, they have alternatives ready to implement. The systematic approach also includes regular review and adjustment periods. Successful people don't just set goals and hope for the best. They schedule regular times to evaluate their progress, assess what's working and what isn't, and make necessary adjustments to their systems. They treat goal achievement as an iterative process of experimentation, measurement, and refinement to develop systematic thinking about your goals. Start by choosing one important goal and reverse engineering it into a complete system. Identify all the factors that contribute to that outcome. Determine which factors you can influence and create specific action plans for each area. Break down your annual goal into quarterly milestones, monthly targets, weekly priorities, and daily actions. Create tracking systems that allow you to monitor your leading indicators, not just your results. If your goal is career advancement, track things like skills developed, networking events attended, projects completed, and feedback received. Not just promotions or salary increases. These leading indicators will give you real-time feedback about whether you're on track long before the final results become apparent. Build accountability systems that keep you consistent with your planned actions. This might include working with a mentor, joining a mastermind group, or simply scheduling regular review sessions with yourself. The key is creating external pressure that helps you maintain consistency even when motivation fluctuates. Remember that goals are achieved through systems and systems are implemented through consistent daily actions. The most successful people in any field are those who have learned to design and implement systems that make their success predictable and sustainable rather than dependent on luck, mood, or external circumstances. Chapter 5. Invest in yourself first. The most successful people in the world have one investment strategy that trumps all others. They consistently invest more in developing themselves than in any external opportunity. While most people spend their time and money on consumption, entertainment, or trying to impress others, successful people have learned that the highest return on investment always comes from improving their own knowledge, skills, capabilities, and mindset. This principle goes far beyond just spending money on education or training. It's about adopting a fundamental belief that you are your most appreciating asset and that every dollar, every hour, and every ounce of energy you invest in making yourself more valuable will compound over time in ways that no external investment can match. Consider the difference in thinking between someone who spends their spare money on a new car versus someone who spends it on learning a high-value skill. The car immediately depreciates in value and creates ongoing expenses. The skill increases in value with practice, opens up new opportunities, increases earning potential, and can never be taken away over a lifetime. This difference in investment priorities creates vastly different outcomes. Successful people understand that in the modern economy, your earning potential is directly tied to the value you can create for others. And your ability to create value is determined by your knowledge, skills, network, and mindset. These are all areas where investment in yourself can create exponential returns. A skill that takes 6 months to learn might increase your income for the next 30 years. A mindset shift that takes weeks to internalize might change the trajectory of your entire life. The self-investment mindset also recognizes that external circumstances are constantly changing. But what you carry in your head travels with you everywhere. Economic downturns can wipe out financial investments. Companies can fail. Industries can become obsolete. But knowledge and skills are portable assets that can be applied in any environment. The person who has invested in developing themselves is far more adaptable and resilient than someone who has only invested in external assets. This thinking pattern shows up in how successful people spend their time outside of work. While most people spend their free time on entertainment and consumption, successful people spend significant portions of their free time on activities that make them more capable, reading books that expand their knowledge, taking courses that develop new skills, attending conferences that expose them to new ideas, or networking with people who challenge them to grow. Successful people also invest in their physical and mental health as foundational assets that support everything else they want to achieve. They understand that without energy, focus, and physical vitality, all other investments become less valuable. They invest in quality sleep, regular exercise, good nutrition, and stress management, not as luxuries, but as essential business expenses that improve their performance in every other area. The self-investment principle extends to investing in relationships and networks. Successful people understand that their network is their net worth not just in terms of financial opportunities but in terms of knowledge sharing, collaboration possibilities and mutual support. They invest time and energy in building and maintaining relationships with other growth-oriented people who can accelerate their development. Another key aspect of self-investment is learning to say no to opportunities that don't align with your development goals. Successful people are selective about how they spend their time and energy because they understand that investing in yourself requires focus and consistency. They turn down social activities, entertainment options, and even some business opportunities if those activities don't contribute to their long-term development. The self-investment mindset also includes investing in tools, resources, and environments that support your growth. This might mean spending money on a better workspace, higher quality tools, or access to information and resources that accelerate your learning. Successful people view these expenditures not as costs, but as investments that will pay dividends through improved performance and capabilities. To develop this thinking pattern, start by conducting an honest audit of how you currently invest your three most valuable resources: time, money, and energy. What percentage of each goes toward activities that make you more capable, knowledgeable, or skilled versus activities that are purely consumptive? Most people are shocked to discover how little they actually invest in their own development. Create a personal development budget that allocates a specific percentage of your income to learning, skill development, health, and growth activities. Treat this budget as non-negotiable, just like you would treat rent or mortgage payments. Start with a small percentage if necessary, but make it consistent and gradually increase it as you start to see returns on your investment. Develop the habit of asking yourself whether each opportunity or activity you're considering will make you more valuable, more capable, or more knowledgeable. Use this as a filter for decision-making about how to spend your discretionary time and money. Choose growth over comfort, learning over entertainment, and development over consumption. Remember that successful people aren't successful because they had better opportunities or more luck. They're successful because they consistently invested in becoming the kind of person who could recognize and capitalize on opportunities when they appeared. They understood that the best investment they could make was in themselves, and they were willing to make that investment consistently over many years even when the returns weren't immediately visible. Chapter 6. Think like an owner, not an employee. One of the most profound mental shifts that separates successful people from everyone else is the transition from employee thinking to owner thinking. This isn't just about starting a business or becoming an entrepreneur, though many successful people do that eventually. It's about adopting a completely different mindset toward responsibility, initiative, problem solving, and value creation. Regardless of your current employment situation, employee thinking is characterized by doing what you're told, staying within defined boundaries, following established procedures, and expecting others to provide direction, motivation, and solutions. It's about trading time for money and viewing work as something you have to do rather than something you choose to do. This mindset creates a sense of limitation and dependence that keeps people trapped in mediocrity. Owner thinking, on the other hand, is characterized by taking full responsibility for outcomes, looking for ways to create value, solving problems proactively, and thinking strategically about long-term results. It's about understanding that your success is entirely up to you and that no one else is coming to save you or make your life better. This mindset creates a sense of empowerment and possibility that drives extraordinary achievement. The difference shows up immediately in how people respond to problems and challenges. When something goes wrong, employee thinkers ask, "Whose fault is this?" Or, "Who's going to fix this?" Owner thinkers ask, "How can I solve this?" Or, "What can I learn from this situation?" Employee thinkers wait for someone else to provide solutions. Owner thinkers start working on solutions immediately. This mental shift dramatically changes how you approach your current job. Even if you're working for someone else, instead of doing the minimum required to avoid getting fired, you start thinking about how to create maximum value for your employer, customers, and colleagues. Instead of watching the clock and counting down to quitting time, you start looking for opportunities to contribute beyond your job description. Owner thinkers understand that every job is temporary, but the skills, relationships, and reputation you build are permanent. They approach every position as an opportunity to develop themselves, build their network, and demonstrate their capabilities to future opportunities. They don't just work in the business, they work on themselves while they're in the business. This mindset also changes how you think about money and compensation. Employee thinkers focus on getting paid more for their time. Owner thinkers focus on becoming more valuable so that better opportunities naturally gravitate toward them. They understand that their income is not determined by how many hours they work but by how much value they create per hour. The owner mindset extends to personal development and skill acquisition. While employee thinkers expect their employer to provide training and development opportunities, owner thinkers take complete responsibility for their own learning and growth. They invest their own time and money in developing skills that will make them more valuable. Regardless of whether their current employer supports or even notices these efforts, successful people with owner thinking also approach relationships differently. Instead of competing with colleagues or hoarding information to protect their position, they look for ways to help others succeed, share knowledge freely, and build collaborative relationships. They understand that helping others become more successful creates a network of people who want to help them succeed in return. The owner mindset particularly shows up in how people handle setbacks and failures. Employee thinkers look for someone to blame and someone to fix the problem. Owner thinkers take responsibility for their part in the situation and focus on what they can do to improve the outcome going forward. They don't waste time or energy on blame, excuses, or waiting for external circumstances to change. This thinking pattern also influences how you view opportunities and career advancement. Employee thinkers wait to be promoted, hoping that someone will notice their good work and reward them with better opportunities. Owner thinkers create their own opportunities by consistently delivering exceptional value, building relationships with decision makers and positioning themselves as indispensable assets to any organization. Owner thinking includes understanding that job security doesn't come from having a stable employer. It comes from having valuable skills and a strong professional network that makes you employable anywhere. In today's rapidly changing economy, the people with the most security are those who have made themselves so valuable that they always have multiple options, not those who try to hold on to one position. The most successful people often start developing owner thinking while they're still employees, which prepares them for eventually starting their own businesses or taking on leadership roles within organizations. They practice taking initiative, solving problems creatively, and thinking strategically about results long before they have formal authority or ownership stakes. To develop owner thinking, start by taking complete responsibility for your results in every area of your life. Instead of blaming external circumstances, difficult people, or bad luck for your outcomes, ask yourself what you could have done differently to create better results. This doesn't mean beating yourself up for past mistakes. It means empowering yourself to create different outcomes going forward. Begin treating your current job as if you owned the company. Look for ways to improve processes, solve problems, and create additional value beyond your basic job requirements. Take initiative on projects. Volunteer for challenging assignments and approach your work with the same level of care and attention you would give to your own business. Invest in developing skills and knowledge that will make you more valuable regardless of whether your current employer pays for this development. Read books related to your industry. Take online courses. Attend conferences and seek out mentors who can accelerate your learning. Think of yourself as a business that needs to constantly upgrade its capabilities to stay competitive. Start building relationships and a professional network as if your future success depends on it, because it does. Connect with colleagues, clients, suppliers, and industry leaders. Look for ways to help others achieve their goals and maintain these relationships even when there's no immediate benefit to you. Your network becomes your most valuable asset when you need new opportunities. Think strategically about your career path instead of just reacting to whatever opportunities come your way. Where do you want to be in 5 or 10 years? What skills and experiences do you need to get there? What relationships do you need to build? What value do you need to create? Develop a strategic plan for your career and execute it systematically. Remember that owner thinking isn't about arrogance or refusing to follow directions. It's about taking personal responsibility for your success, looking for ways to create value wherever you are, and building the skills and mindset that will serve you throughout your career. The most successful people in any organization are those who think like owners regardless of their official title or position. Chapter 7. Focus on value creation. Perhaps the most transformative thinking pattern that separates highly successful people from everyone else is their relentless focus on creating value for others. While most people focus on what they can get from situations, relationships, and opportunities, successful people have trained themselves to focus first on what they can give, contribute, or create that benefits others. This isn't about being altruistic or sacrificing your own interests for others. It's about understanding a fundamental principle of success. The amount of value you receive in life is directly proportional to the amount of value you create for others. Your income, your relationships, your opportunities, and your overall success are all determined by how much value other people receive from knowing you, working with you, or doing business with you. Most people have this backwards. They focus on what they want to get out of every situation. How much money they can make, what benefits they can receive, how others can help them achieve their goals. This creates a scarcity mindset that actually repels the very things they're trying to attract. When people sense that you're primarily focused on what you can get from them, they naturally become defensive and less willing to help you. Successful people understand that the fastest way to get what you want is to help other people get what they want. They approach every interaction with the question, how can I be helpful? Rather than, what can I get out of this? This shift in focus creates a completely different dynamic in relationships and opportunities. Value creation thinking shows up in how successful people approach their careers. Instead of focusing primarily on salary, benefits, and advancement opportunities, they focus on how they can solve problems, improve processes, and create results that benefit their employer and colleagues. They understand that when you make yourself incredibly valuable to others, compensation and advancement become natural byproducts. This mindset also transforms how successful people build businesses. Instead of starting with how much money they can make, they start with what problems they can solve or what needs they can meet in the marketplace. They focus on creating products or services that genuinely improve people's lives, knowing that if they create enough value for enough people, financial success will follow automatically. The value creation mindset extends to personal relationships as well. Successful people focus on being the kind of person others want to be around. Someone who listens well, offers helpful advice, provides emotional support, and celebrates others' successes. They understand that strong relationships are built on mutual value exchange, and they make sure they're contributing at least as much as they're receiving. In networking situations, while most people focus on collecting business cards and making contacts who might be useful to them, successful people focus on learning about others' challenges and goals so they can provide helpful introductions, resources, or advice. This approach builds much stronger and more lasting professional relationships because people remember those who helped them, not those who tried to use them. Value creation thinking also influences how successful people handle problems and conflicts. Instead of focusing on blame or protecting themselves, they focus on finding solutions that benefit everyone involved. They approach conflicts as opportunities to create win-win outcomes rather than zero-sum battles where someone has to lose. The most successful people understand that there are different types of value they can create. There's economic value, helping others make money, save money, or achieve financial goals. There's functional value, solving practical problems, or making processes more efficient. There's emotional value, providing encouragement, inspiration, or emotional support. There's social value, helping people connect with others or improve their relationships. And there's educational value, teaching others new skills or sharing useful knowledge. Successful people become students of value creation. They constantly look for ways to increase the value they provide in all these areas. They ask themselves questions like, what problems do the people around me face that I could help solve? What skills or knowledge do I have that could benefit others? How can I make other people's lives easier, better, or more enjoyable? This focus on value creation also makes successful people more attractive to opportunities. When business leaders, potential partners, or even romantic interests meet someone who is clearly focused on creating value rather than just getting value, they naturally want to build relationships with that person. Value creators become magnets for other value creators, leading to exponential opportunities for collaboration and mutual success. The value creation mindset requires a long-term perspective. Sometimes the value you create for others doesn't result in immediate benefits for you. You might help someone succeed without receiving any direct compensation or recognition, but over time this approach builds a reputation and a network of people who want to reciprocate and help you succeed. To develop value creation thinking, start by conducting an honest assessment of your current approach to relationships and opportunities in your interactions with others. Are you primarily focused on what you can get or what you can give? Do you approach networking events thinking about who might be useful to you or thinking about how you might be useful to others? Begin shifting your focus by actively looking for ways to help the people around you. This could be as simple as making helpful introductions between people in your network, sharing relevant articles or resources with colleagues, or offering to help with projects that aren't officially your responsibility. Start small, but be consistent in looking for value creation opportunities. Develop your skills and knowledge specifically with an eye toward how you can use them to benefit others. If you're learning a new technology, think about how you can use it to solve problems for your employer or clients. If you're developing expertise in an area, consider how you can share that knowledge through teaching, writing, or mentoring others. Practice asking better questions in your conversations with others. Instead of focusing on what you need or want, ask questions that help you understand what others are trying to achieve and what challenges they face. The more you understand about others' goals and obstacles, the better positioned you are to identify ways you can be helpful. Remember that value creation is not just a business strategy. It's a life philosophy. The most successful and fulfilled people are those who have made value creation a central part of who they are. They find genuine satisfaction in helping others succeed. And this authentic desire to contribute creates opportunities and relationships that purely transactional approaches never could. Chapter 8. Think in systems and processes. One of the most powerful mental frameworks that separates successful people from everyone else is their ability to think in terms of systems and processes rather than just individual actions and events. While most people focus on isolated incidents, immediate problems or single solutions, successful people see the underlying patterns, interconnected relationships, and repeatable processes that create consistent results over time. This systems thinking approach allows successful people to create predictable outcomes rather than hoping for lucky breaks. They understand that sustainable success is not the result of working harder or getting lucky, but of designing and implementing systems that automatically produce the results they want. This is why successful people can often achieve more while working less and why their success tends to compound and accelerate over time. Systems thinking shows up first in how successful people approach problem solving. When faced with a challenge, most people look for quick fixes or band-aid solutions that address the immediate symptoms. Successful people step back and analyze the entire system that created the problem, looking for root causes and structural issues that need to be addressed to prevent the problem from recurring. For example, if a business is losing customers, systems thinkers don't just focus on winning back individual customers. They analyze the entire customer experience system. How customers discover the business, what their initial interactions are like, how well the product or service meets their needs, how customer service handles problems, and what the follow-up process looks like. They look for systematic improvements that will prevent customer loss and increase customer satisfaction across the board. This approach extends to personal productivity and time management. While most people try to get more done by working longer hours or using willpower to stay focused, successful people design systems that make productivity automatic. They create routines, templates, checklists, and processes that eliminate decision fatigue and ensure that important tasks get done consistently without relying on motivation or memory. Successful people also think systematically about skill development and learning. Instead of randomly taking courses or reading books when they feel like it, they design learning systems that ensure continuous improvement in areas that matter most to their goals. They might schedule specific times for learning, create accountability structures, or establish ways to practice and apply new knowledge systematically. The systems approach is particularly powerful in business and entrepreneurship. Successful business owners understand that their job is not to work in the business doing everything themselves, but to work on the business, creating systems that allow it to operate effectively without their constant intervention. They systematize everything from marketing and sales to customer service and product delivery, creating predictable and scalable operations. This systems thinking extends to financial management as well. Instead of just trying to spend less or make more money sporadically, successful people create financial systems that automatically direct money towards savings, investments, and important goals. They set up automatic transfers, create budgeting processes, and establish investment strategies that compound their wealth over time without requiring constant attention. Successful people also apply systems thinking to their relationships and networks. Instead of randomly meeting people and hoping for the best, they create systematic approaches to building and maintaining professional relationships. They might have systems for staying in touch with contacts, processes for meeting new people in their industry, or structured approaches to providing value to their network. The power of systems thinking becomes most apparent when successful people need to scale their efforts or teach others to achieve similar results because they think in terms of repeatable processes rather than personal traits or lucky breaks. They can document their approaches, train others to implement them, and create consistent results across multiple people or situations. Systems thinkers are also better at identifying leverage points where small changes can create big results. Instead of trying to improve everything at once, they analyze their systems to find the few critical factors that have the most impact on outcomes. They focus their improvement efforts on these high-leverage areas, creating maximum results with minimum effort. Another key aspect of systems thinking is understanding feedback loops and delayed consequences. Most people focus on immediate results and miss the long-term effects of their actions. Systems thinkers understand that many actions have delayed consequences, and they design their systems with an eye toward long-term sustainability rather than just short-term results. To develop systems thinking, start by looking for patterns in your life rather than focusing on individual events. When something goes well or poorly, ask yourself what systematic factors contributed to that outcome. What processes, habits, or structures were involved? How could you modify those systems to create better results more consistently? Begin documenting and systematizing activities that you do repeatedly. If you have a morning routine that works well, write it down and refine it. If you have a process for managing projects at work, document it so you can improve it and teach it to others. Look for opportunities to create templates, checklists, or standard procedures that make important activities more efficient and consistent. Practice thinking about root causes rather than just symptoms when problems arise. When something goes wrong, ask yourself what systematic changes could prevent similar problems in the future. Instead of just fixing the immediate issue, look for ways to improve the underlying processes or structures that created the problem. Start designing systems for your most important goals. If you want to improve your health, create a system that includes regular exercise, healthy meal planning, adequate sleep, and stress management. If you want to advance your career, create a system for skill development, networking, and performance improvement. Make your success automatic rather than dependent on daily motivation. Remember that systems thinking is not about overcomplicating things or creating bureaucracy. It's about identifying the most efficient and effective ways to achieve your goals consistently and then implementing those approaches systematically. The most successful people are those who have learned to create simple, elegant systems that produce extraordinary results with less effort and stress. Chapter 9. Embrace delayed gratification. One of the most critical mental patterns that separates successful people from everyone else is their ability to delay immediate gratification in favor of long-term benefits. While most people prioritize short-term comfort, pleasure, or convenience, successful people have trained themselves to make decisions based on long-term consequences rather than immediate impulses. This single thinking pattern underlies almost every other aspect of success, from building wealth and developing skills to maintaining health and creating meaningful relationships. The ability to delay gratification is not just about willpower or self-discipline. Though those qualities are important, it's about fundamentally rewiring how you think about time, rewards, and decision. It's about training your brain to value future benefits more highly than immediate pleasures and to see short-term sacrifice as an investment in long-term success rather than as deprivation. This thinking pattern shows up immediately in how successful people handle money. While most people spend money as soon as they earn it on things that provide immediate satisfaction, successful people prioritize saving and investing money that will grow over time. They choose to live below their means in the short term so they can live above their means in the long term. They understand that every dollar saved and invested today will multiply into many dollars in the future. The delayed gratification mindset also appears in career development. Most people want immediate advancement, higher salaries, and better positions without investing the time and effort required to develop the skills and reputation that justify those rewards. Successful people are willing to work in less glamorous positions, take on challenging assignments, and invest years in learning and growing before expecting significant rewards. They understand that career success is built over decades, not months. This pattern is particularly evident in skill development and education. While most people avoid the discomfort of learning difficult new skills or studying complex subjects, successful people embrace that discomfort because they understand that today's learning effort becomes tomorrow's competitive advantage. They're willing to spend evenings and weekends developing capabilities that others won't, knowing that this investment will pay dividends for years to come. The delayed gratification principle extends to health and fitness as well. Successful people understand that maintaining their physical and mental health requires daily choices that prioritize long-term vitality over short-term pleasure. They choose to exercise when they'd rather relax, eat nutritious foods when they'd rather have junk food, and get adequate sleep when they'd rather stay up late. They see these choices not as sacrifices but as investments in their long-term energy and capability. In business and entrepreneurship, delayed gratification thinking is absolutely critical. Building a successful business requires years of working longer hours for less money than you could make as an employee. Reinvesting profits back into the business instead of spending them on personal luxuries and persisting through failures and setbacks that would cause most people to quit. Successful entrepreneurs understand that business success requires enormous short-term sacrifice for long-term freedom and financial reward. The ability to delay gratification also shows up in relationship building. While most people want immediate connection and intimacy, successful people understand that the strongest relationships are built slowly over time through consistent trust building, mutual support, and shared experiences. They're willing to invest time and energy in relationships long before receiving significant benefits, knowing that these investments create lasting bonds that provide support and opportunities for decades. This thinking pattern requires a sophisticated understanding of compound effects. Just as money compounds when invested, so do skills, relationships, reputation, and habits. Successful people understand that small consistent actions taken over long periods create exponential results that far exceed the sum of the individual actions. They're willing to make small sacrifices daily because they understand how these compound into massive advantages over time. Delayed gratification thinking also changes how you handle setbacks and failures. Instead of seeking immediate relief from disappointment through distraction or giving up, successful people lean into the discomfort and use it as motivation to work harder and learn more. They understand that the pain of failure is temporary, but the lessons and resilience gained from working through that pain last forever. The most successful people have learned to find satisfaction in the process of working toward long-term goals rather than needing immediate rewards to stay motivated. They've trained themselves to feel good about making the right choices even when those choices don't provide immediate benefits. They derive pleasure from discipline itself, knowing that disciplined choices compound into extraordinary outcomes. To develop delayed gratification thinking, start by getting clear about your long-term goals and the specific benefits you'll receive by achieving them. Make these future benefits as vivid and emotionally compelling as possible. When you're tempted by short-term pleasures that conflict with your long-term goals, remind yourself specifically what you're working toward and why it's worth the sacrifice. Practice making small delayed gratification choices consistently. If you want to build wealth, automatically save a percentage of every paycheck before you have a chance to spend it. If you want to improve your health, pack healthy lunches instead of buying convenience food. If you want to develop skills, spend 30 minutes every day learning instead of watching television. Start with small choices that build the mental muscle of delayed gratification. Create systems and environments that make delayed gratification easier. Remove temptations from your environment when possible, and create positive peer pressure by surrounding yourself with people who also prioritize long-term thinking. Use technology to automate good choices like automatic savings transfers or calendar reminders for important activities. Regularly calculate the compound effects of your delayed gratification choices. Figure out how much money you'll have in 10 or 20 years if you consistently save and invest. Estimate how much more valuable you'll be professionally if you consistently develop skills. Visualize how much healthier and more energetic you'll be if you consistently make good health choices. Make the long-term benefits concrete and compelling. Remember that delayed gratification is not about depriving yourself of all pleasure or living a joyless life. It's about being strategic about which pleasures you choose and when you choose them. Successful people often enjoy more pleasure and luxury than anyone else, but they earn those rewards through disciplined choices that create long-term success rather than seeking immediate gratification that undermines their future. Chapter 10. Think strategically about relationships. One of the most sophisticated thinking patterns that distinguishes highly successful people is their strategic approach to relationships. This doesn't mean being manipulative or treating people as tools to be used. Instead, It means understanding that relationships are the foundation of all success and approaching them with the same level of intentionality, investment, and long-term thinking that you would apply to any other critical asset in your life. Most people approach relationships reactively. They build friendships based on convenience or proximity, network only when they need something, and treat professional relationships as purely transactional exchanges. Successful people understand that relationships are the primary driver of opportunities, support, knowledge sharing, and personal growth. And they approach relationship building as one of their most important ongoing activities. Strategic relationship thinking starts with understanding that your network truly is your net worth, but not in the superficial way that phrase is often interpreted. It's not about collecting business cards or having the most linked connections. It's about building genuine, mutually beneficial relationships with people who can accelerate your growth, provide valuable perspectives, open doors to opportunities, and support you through challenges over the long term. Successful people think carefully about the types of relationships they need to support their goals and then systematically work to build those relationships. They identify mentors who can guide their development, peers who can collaborate and share resources, and junior people they can mentor and who might become valuable connections as their careers progress. They also build relationships with people in complementary fields who can provide different perspectives and opportunities. The strategic approach to relationships includes being generous with your time, knowledge, and resources long before you need anything in return. Successful people understand that the strongest relationships are built on mutual value creation. They look for ways to help others achieve their goals, make valuable introductions, share useful information, and provide support during difficult times. This generosity creates a network of people who want to reciprocate when opportunities arise. Strategic relationship thinking also involves being selective about who you spend time with. Successful people understand that you become like the people you spend the most time with. So they consciously choose to associate with others who are growing, achieving, and thinking at high levels. They limit time spent with negative, unambitious, or toxic people. Not out of arrogance but out of understanding that relationships profoundly influence your mindset and outcomes. This selectivity extends to romantic relationships as well. Successful people understand that your life partner has more influence on your success than almost any other factor. They choose partners who support their growth, share their values, and complement their strengths rather than simply choosing based on attraction or convenience. They understand that the right relationship can accelerate your success dramatically, while the wrong relationship can undermine everything else you're trying to achieve. Successful people also think strategically about maintaining relationships over time. They understand that relationships require ongoing investment and attention to remain strong. They create systems for staying in touch with important contacts, remembering significant events in people's lives, and finding ways to provide ongoing value to their network. They don't just reach out when they need something. They maintain regular contact to keep relationships warm and mutually beneficial. The strategic approach includes understanding different types of relationships and managing them appropriately. Some relationships are primarily professional and should be maintained at that level. Others can develop into deeper friendships that provide personal support and enjoyment beyond professional benefits. Successful people are clear about these distinctions and manage each type of relationship appropriately. Strategic relationship thinking also involves understanding reciprocity and balance. While successful people are generous with their help and support, they also pay attention to whether relationships are mutually beneficial over time. They invest more heavily in relationships with people who also look for ways to provide value, and they gradually reduce investment in relationships that become one-sided or parasitic. Another key aspect of strategic relationship thinking is diversification. Just as you wouldn't put all your financial investments in one stock, successful people don't rely on just one or two key relationships for all their opportunities and support. They build diverse networks that include people from different industries, backgrounds, age groups, and geographic locations. This diversification provides resilience and access to a broader range of opportunities and perspectives. Successful people also understand the importance of weak ties in addition to strong relationships. Research shows that many breakthrough opportunities come through acquaintances rather than close friends because acquaintances travel in different circles and have access to different information and opportunities. Strategic relationship thinkers maintain large networks of weaker connections in addition to their core group of strong relationships. To develop strategic relationship thinking, start by mapping your current network and identifying gaps. What types of relationships do you need to support your goals that you don't currently have? Are you missing mentors, peers in your field, connections in other industries, or relationships with people at different career levels? Make a plan to systematically build relationships in areas where you have gaps. Begin approaching networking with a value-first mindset. Before attending networking events or reaching out to new contacts, think about what you can offer rather than what you hope to get. Prepare ways to be helpful to others, whether through introductions, information sharing, or offering your skills and expertise. This approach makes you much more attractive as a networking contact. Create systems for maintaining relationships over time. This might include keeping a simple database of important contacts with notes about their interests and goals, setting calendar reminders to reach out to people periodically, or establishing regular habits like sending article links or making introductions that provide value to your network. Invest time in building deeper relationships with a core group of high-potential connections rather than trying to maintain superficial relationships with everyone you meet. Focus on finding ways to collaborate, support each other's goals, and create mutual value over time. These deeper relationships become your most valuable assets as your career progresses. Practice being genuinely interested in others rather than just trying to be interesting yourself. Ask thoughtful questions about people's goals, challenges, and experiences. Listen actively to their responses and look for ways to be helpful. People are naturally drawn to those who show genuine interest in their success and well-being. Remember that strategic relationship thinking is not about using people or being manipulative. It's about recognizing that relationships are the foundation of all success and approaching them with the same level of intentionality and investment that you would apply to any other critical asset. The most successful people are those who have learned to build genuine, mutually beneficial relationships that support everyone's growth and success over the long term. Chapter 11. Maintain a beginner's mind. One of the most counterintuitive thinking patterns that separates truly successful people from those who plateau is their ability to maintain what Zen Buddhism calls beginner's mind, even as they become experts in their fields. While most people become more rigid and closed-minded as they gain experience and expertise, the most successful people deliberately cultivate curiosity, openness to new ideas, and willingness to be wrong or to learn from anyone, regardless of that person's status or experience level. This beginner's mind approach is not about lacking confidence or expertise. It's about understanding that the moment you think you know everything about your field is the moment you stop growing and start becoming obsolete in today's rapidly changing world. The skills and knowledge that made you successful yesterday may not be sufficient for tomorrow's challenges. The most successful people understand that learning is not something you do until you become successful. It's something you do because you want to remain successful. Beginner's mind thinking shows up in how successful people approach their own expertise instead of using their knowledge as a reason to stop learning. They use it as a foundation for deeper learning. They understand that the more you know about a subject, the more you realize how much you don't know. This awareness keeps them humble and hungry for new information, perspectives, and approaches. This mindset is particularly crucial in business and entrepreneurship where market conditions, customer preferences, and competitive landscapes are constantly evolving. Companies that become too confident in their existing approaches often find themselves disrupted by newcomers who see opportunities that the established players missed. Successful business leaders maintain beginner's mind by constantly questioning their assumptions, experimenting with new approaches and staying curious about emerging trends and technologies. The beginner's mind approach also influences how successful people interact with others. Instead of always trying to demonstrate their expertise or prove how much they know, they focus on learning from every interaction. They ask questions, listen carefully to different perspectives, and remain open to ideas that challenge their existing beliefs. They understand that valuable insights can come from anywhere. Junior employees, customers, competitors, or even people outside their industry entirely. This thinking pattern requires genuine intellectual humility, which is different from false modesty or lack of confidence. Intellectual humility means being confident in your ability to learn and adapt while remaining genuinely uncertain about whether your current knowledge and approaches are optimal. It means being strong enough in your sense of self that you don't need to be right all the time or prove your expertise in every conversation. Successful people with beginner's mind are particularly good at learning from failure and criticism. Instead of defending their previous decisions or trying to save face, they approach setbacks as learning opportunities. They ask themselves what assumptions they made that turned out to be wrong, what information they missed, and what they would do differently next time. This approach turns every failure into valuable data for future success. The beginner's mind also shows up in how successful people approach new challenges or opportunities outside their area of expertise. Instead of avoiding situations where they might not immediately excel, they embrace these opportunities as chances to expand their capabilities. They're comfortable being beginners again, asking basic questions and learning from people who know more than they do in these new areas. This mindset is particularly powerful when combined with the confidence that comes from having succeeded before. Successful people understand that their ability to learn and adapt is more valuable than any specific knowledge or skill they currently possess. This gives them the confidence to enter new fields, take on unfamiliar challenges and reinvent themselves when necessary. Beginner's mind thinking also influences how successful people stay current in their fields. Instead of relying solely on their existing knowledge and experience, they actively seek out new information, attend conferences, read research, and engage with thought leaders who are pushing the boundaries of their industry. They understand that expertise requires constant updating and refinement. The most successful people also maintain beginner's mind in their personal development. They don't assume that because they've achieved success in one area of life, they automatically know how to succeed in other areas. They approach relationships, health, finances, and personal growth with the same curiosity and willingness to learn that they brought to their professional success. This thinking pattern requires actively fighting against the natural human tendency toward cognitive arrogance. As people gain expertise and experience success, they naturally become more confident in their opinions and less open to alternative viewpoints. Beginner's mind requires deliberately choosing curiosity over certainty, questions over statements, and learning over knowing. To develop beginner's mind thinking, start by regularly questioning your own assumptions and beliefs. In areas where you consider yourself knowledgeable, actively seek out information that challenges your current understanding. Look for people who disagree with your perspectives and try to understand their reasoning rather than immediately dismissing their ideas. Practice asking more questions and making fewer statements in your conversations with others. Instead of trying to demonstrate your knowledge, focus on learning something new from every interaction. Ask people about their experiences, their perspectives, and their approaches to problems. You'll be amazed at how much you can learn when you approach conversations with genuine curiosity. Regularly expose yourself to new ideas and perspectives by reading books, articles, and research outside your immediate field of expertise. Attend conferences or workshops in adjacent industries. Take courses in subjects that interest you but where you have no previous experience. The goal is to keep your mind flexible and open to new ways of thinking. When you encounter failure or criticism, resist the natural tendency to defend your previous decisions or blame external circumstances. Instead, approach these situations as learning opportunities. Ask yourself what you can learn from the experience and how you can apply those lessons going forward. This approach turns every setback into valuable education. Make it a practice to identify at least one person who knows more than you do in areas that matter to your success and then find ways to learn from them. This might mean finding a mentor, joining a mastermind group, or simply reaching out to experts in your field and asking thoughtful questions. The key is maintaining the humility to recognize that others have valuable knowledge to share. Remember that beginner's mind is not about lacking confidence or pretending to know less than you do. It's about balancing confidence in your ability to learn and succeed with humility about how much you still have to learn. The most successful people are those who never stop being students regardless of how much they've already achieved. Chapter 12. Think in terms of leverage and scalability. One of the most sophisticated thinking patterns that separates extraordinarily successful people from those who achieve only moderate success is their constant focus on leverage and scalability. While most people think in terms of linear relationships between effort and results, successful people are always looking for ways to multiply their impact, create exponential returns on their investments, and build systems that can grow without proportional increases in their personal time and effort. Leverage thinking means understanding that some actions, decisions, and investments produce far greater returns than others, and then focusing disproportionately on these high-leverage activities. It's about working smarter rather than just working harder and finding ways to accomplish more with less by identifying and exploiting force multipliers in every aspect of your life and work. This thinking pattern shows up immediately in how successful people approach their time and energy. Instead of trying to do everything themselves or treating all tasks as equally important, they identify the activities that produce the most significant results and focus the majority of their attention on those areas. They understand that 20% of their activities typically produce 80% of their results, and they organize their lives around maximizing time spent in that critical 20%. Successful people also think about leverage in terms of other people's time, money, and expertise. Instead of trying to develop every skill themselves or fund every opportunity with their own resources, they learn to tap into other people's capabilities and capital. This might mean hiring employees or contractors to handle tasks that others can do better or more efficiently, partnering with people who have complementary skills, or raising capital from investors who believe in their vision. The leverage mindset extends to learning and skill development as well. Instead of trying to learn everything through personal experience, successful people leverage other people's knowledge and experience through books, courses, mentorship, and consultation. They understand that learning from others' mistakes and successes can accelerate their progress dramatically compared to figuring everything out themselves. Scalability thinking takes leverage one step further by focusing on building systems, processes, and assets that can grow without requiring proportional increases in personal involvement. While most people trade time for money in linear relationships, successful people work to create sources of income and impact that can expand without requiring them to work proportionally more hours. This scalability focus is obvious in business, where successful entrepreneurs work to build companies that can serve more customers, generate more revenue, and create more value without requiring the founder to work longer hours. They systematically replace themselves in operational roles, build systems that can operate without their direct involvement, and create products or services that can be delivered to many customers simultaneously. But scalability thinking applies beyond business as well. Successful people look for ways to scale their impact in every area of life. They might create educational content that can help thousands of people learn from their expertise, build investment portfolios that generate passive income, or develop relationships and networks that continue to provide value and opportunities over many years without requiring constant maintenance. The combination of leverage and scalability thinking leads successful people to focus heavily on creating assets rather than just earning income. Assets are things that continue to provide value over time without requiring ongoing effort, while income typically requires continuous work to maintain. Successful people work to build financial assets, intellectual property, skills, relationships, and systems that continue generating value long after the initial investment of time and effort. This thinking pattern also influences how successful people approach problem solving and decision M. Instead of just solving immediate problems, they look for solutions that address entire categories of problems or prevent similar issues from arising in the future. They invest more time upfront in creating systems and processes that eliminate the need to solve the same problems repeatedly. Successful people understand that leverage and scalability often require upfront investments that don't pay off immediately. Building systems, developing assets, and creating scalable approaches typically require more initial effort than just handling things manually or individually. But they're willing to make these investments because they understand the long-term benefits of exponential rather than linear growth. The leverage and scalability mindset also changes how successful people think about their role and identity. Instead of seeing themselves as people who do work, they see themselves as people who create systems that do work. Instead of being the person who solves every problem, they become the person who builds problem-solving capabilities. This shift allows them to have much greater impact while working less rather than more over time. This thinking pattern requires constantly asking different questions about every activity and opportunity. Instead of "how can I do this faster?" successful people ask "how can I eliminate the need to do this repeatedly?" Instead of "how can I work harder?" they ask "how can I create systems that work for me?" Instead of "how can I solve this problem?" they ask "how can I build capabilities that prevent this type of problem?" To develop leverage and scalability thinking, start by analyzing how you currently spend your time and identifying activities that produce disproportionate results. Look for patterns in your most successful outcomes and try to understand what factors made those results possible. Focus more of your attention on replicating and amplifying these high-leverage activities. Begin looking for opportunities to replace your personal effort with systems, tools, or other people's capabilities. This might mean automating routine tasks, delegating responsibilities to others, or investing in tools and technology that multiply your effectiveness. Start small, but consistently look for ways to accomplish the same results with less personal time investment. Think about ways to turn your knowledge, skills, and expertise into assets that can benefit multiple people or generate ongoing value. This might mean creating training materials, writing books or articles, developing processes that others can follow, or building products that serve many customers simultaneously. Practice thinking systematically about problems rather than just solving individual instances. When you encounter a challenge, ask yourself whether this is likely to be a recurring issue and whether solving it systematically might prevent similar problems in the future. Invest extra effort in creating scalable solutions even when simpler fixes are available. Start building assets in every area of your life. In your career, work to develop skills, relationships, and reputation that will continue providing value over time. In your finances, focus on investments that generate passive income or appreciate in value. In your personal life, create systems and habits that maintain your health and relationships without requiring constant attention. Remember that leverage and scalability thinking is not about being lazy or avoiding work. It's about being strategic about how you apply your time and effort to create maximum impact and sustainable success. The most successful people often work very hard, but they work hard on building systems and assets that continue providing value long after the initial work is complete. Chapter 13. Focus on solutions, not problems. One of the most transformative mental shifts that distinguishes successful people from everyone else is their automatic orientation towards solutions rather than problems. While most people naturally focus their attention on what's wrong, what's difficult, or what's not working, successful people have trained their minds to immediately shift from problem identification to solution generation. This isn't about ignoring problems or pretending they don't exist. It's about understanding that problems are simply puzzles waiting to be solved and that your mental energy is far better invested in finding solutions than in dwelling on difficulties. This solution-focused thinking pattern creates a completely different emotional and psychological experience when facing challenges. Most people encounter problems and immediately feel stressed, overwhelmed, or defeated because their minds become fixated on the difficulty of the situation. Successful people encounter the same problems but immediately feel energized and engaged because their minds automatically start generating possible solutions and approaches. The difference in mental focus creates dramatically different outcomes. When you focus on problems, your brain becomes expert at finding more problems, complications, and reasons why things won't work. This creates a downward spiral of negativity and helplessness that makes it much harder to take effective action. When you focus on solutions, your brain becomes expert at finding possibilities, resources, and ways to move forward, creating an upward spiral of optimism and empowerment. Solution-focused thinking shows up immediately in how successful people communicate about challenges. Instead of spending time complaining about problems, explaining why things are difficult or seeking sympathy for their struggles, they quickly acknowledge the challenge and then shift the conversation to potential approaches and next steps. This difference in communication style makes them much more attractive to work with because people want to be around problem solvers, not problem dwellers. This thinking pattern also influences how successful people approach decision when facing difficult choices. Instead of getting paralyzed by all the potential negative outcomes or complications, they focus on finding the option that offers the best potential for positive results. They understand that most decisions involve trade-offs and potential problems, but they don't let the existence of problems prevent them from making progress. Successful people have learned to reframe problems as opportunities in disguise. Every problem represents a gap between current reality and desired outcomes. And closing that gap often creates value for yourself and others. The bigger the problem, the bigger the opportunity for someone who can solve it. This reframing transforms problems from sources of stress into sources of potential advancement and success. The solution-focused mindset particularly shows up in how successful people handle setbacks and failures. Instead of spending mental energy on blame, regret or self-pity, they immediately shift to analysis and planning. What can we learn from this situation? What would we do differently next time? What steps can we take right now to improve the situation? This approach turns every setback into a stepping stone for future success. This thinking pattern also extends to how successful people view other people's limitations and difficulties. Instead of getting frustrated with others' shortcomings or using them as excuses for poor results, solution-focused thinkers look for ways to work around limitations, develop people's capabilities, or restructure situations to better utilize everyone's strengths. They understand that complaining about other people's limitations doesn't change those limitations. But finding ways to work effectively despite those limitations creates better outcomes for everyone. Solution-focused thinking requires developing comfort with uncertainty and incomplete information. Most problems don't come with obvious solutions and the path forward is often unclear. Successful people have learned to take action based on the best available information while remaining flexible and adaptive as new information becomes available. They understand that perfect solutions rarely exist. But good solutions implemented quickly usually beat perfect solutions implemented slowly. This mindset also influences how successful people invest their time and energy when facing multiple challenges simultaneously. Instead of trying to solve every problem perfectly, they focus on identifying the few critical issues that, if resolved, would have the biggest positive impact on their overall situation. They understand that solving the right problems can eliminate many other problems automatically. The solution-focused approach includes understanding the difference between productive worry and unproductive worry. Productive worry involves thinking through potential problems in advance and developing contingency plans. Unproductive worry involves repeatedly thinking about problems without taking any action to address them. Successful people engage in productive worry as part of their planning process, but they avoid unproductive worry that drains energy without creating value. Successful people also understand that sometimes the best solution to a problem is to avoid or prevent it entirely rather than solving it after it occurs. They invest time and energy in prevention, preparation, and risk management, not because they enjoy thinking about potential problems, but because preventing problems is usually much easier than solving them after they occur. To develop solution-focused thinking, start by becoming aware of how much time and mental energy you currently spend focused on problems versus solutions. Most people are shocked to discover how much of their thinking is problem-focused rather than solution-focused. Pay attention to your internal dialogue and your conversations with others. Are you spending more time describing problems or generating solutions? Practice immediately shifting to solution mode whenever you encounter a challenge. As soon as you identify a problem, force yourself to generate at least 3 possible approaches for addressing it, even if none of them seem perfect. The goal is to train your brain to automatically look for solutions rather than dwelling on difficulties. When discussing challenges with others, establish a rule that every problem identified must be accompanied by at least one proposed solution. This creates a culture of solution-focused thinking in your relationships and work environment. People will quickly learn to think through potential approaches before bringing problems to your attention. Develop the habit of asking solution-focused questions when facing difficulties. Instead of "Why is this so hard?" ask "What would make this easier?" Instead of "What if this doesn't work?" ask "What would need to be true for this to work?" Instead of "Who's to blame for this problem?" ask "What can we do to fix this situation?" Build your problem-solving skills by regularly tackling challenges that are outside your comfort zone. The more experience you have successfully solving difficult problems, the more confident you'll become in your ability to find solutions to new challenges. This confidence makes it easier to maintain a solution-focused mindset even when facing unfamiliar or complex problems. Remember that solution-focused thinking is not about being unrealistically optimistic or ignoring legitimate concerns. It's about choosing to invest your mental energy in approaches that move you forward rather than dwelling on factors that keep you stuck. Problems are inevitable, but your response to problems is entirely within your control. Chapter 14. Take complete responsibility for your results. Perhaps no thinking pattern more definitively separates successful people from unsuccessful people than their willingness to take complete responsibility for their results regardless of external circumstances, other people's actions or factors beyond their direct control. While most people instinctively look for external explanations for their outcomes, successful people have developed the mental discipline to focus entirely on their own role in creating their results, even when external factors have clearly contributed to their situation. This responsibility-taking mindset is not masochistic self-blame or ignoring the reality of external influences. It's a strategic choice based on understanding that focusing on your own role in outcomes is the only approach that gives you power to change those outcomes. When you blame external factors for your results, you essentially declare yourself powerless to improve your situation. When you take responsibility for your results, you empower yourself to create different outcomes in the future. The responsibility mindset shows up immediately in how successful people respond to both positive and negative outcomes when things go well. They don't just attribute success to luck, good timing, or helpful people. Though they may acknowledge these factors, they also analyze what they did to position themselves for success, what skills they developed that contributed to the outcome, and what decisions they made that created favorable conditions. This analysis helps them replicate successful outcomes in the future. More importantly, when things go poorly, successful people resist the natural human tendency to blame external circumstances, difficult people, or bad luck. Instead, they immediately focus on their own role in the situation. What could they have done differently? What warning signs did they miss? What skills did they need to develop? What assumptions did they make that turned out to be wrong? This focus on personal responsibility transforms every failure into valuable learning that improves future performance. This thinking pattern particularly distinguishes successful people in how they handle difficult relationships and interpersonal conflicts. While most people focus on what the other person did wrong or how unfairly they were treated, successful people focus on their own communication, their expectations, their boundary setting, and their choices about how to respond to others' behavior. They understand that they can't control other people, but they can control their own actions and responses. The responsibility mindset also shows up in how successful people approach their careers and professional development. Instead of waiting for their employer to provide training opportunities, clear career paths, or ideal working conditions, they take complete responsibility for their own skill development, career advancement, and job satisfaction. They understand that their professional success is ultimately their responsibility regardless of their employer's policies or their manager's leadership style. Taking complete responsibility requires distinguishing between fault and responsibility. Fault is about blame and judgment regarding past events. Responsibility is about ownership and action regarding future outcomes. You may not be at fault for everything that happens to you, but you are responsible for how you respond to everything that happens to you. This distinction allows successful people to take responsibility without engaging in unproductive self-blame. The responsibility mindset transforms how successful people view obstacles and challenges. Instead of seeing external difficulties as excuses for poor performance, they see them as conditions that must be factored into their strategy and execution. They understand that everyone faces obstacles and that success goes to those who take responsibility for overcoming their particular set of challenges rather than those who use challenges as explanations for failure. This thinking pattern also influences how successful people approach goal setting and achievement. They don't set goals based on what they hope will happen or what they need other people to do. They set goals based on outcomes they can influence through their own actions, and they create plans that don't depend on external factors they can't control. This approach makes their success much more predictable and sustainable. Successful people also take responsibility for their own motivation and emotional state. Instead of waiting to feel motivated or inspired, they take action regardless of their emotional state. Instead of letting other people's moods or attitudes affect their performance, they maintain their own standards and energy levels. They understand that their emotional state is their responsibility and that high performance requires emotional self-management. The responsibility mindset extends to financial outcomes as well. Successful people don't blame their financial situation on economic conditions, their employer's compensation policies, or their family background. They take complete responsibility for their financial results and focus on developing the skills, creating the value, and making the decisions that will improve their financial situation over time. This thinking pattern requires developing what psychologists call an internal locus of control. The belief that you have significant influence over your outcomes through your own actions and decisions. People with an external locus of control believe that their results are primarily determined by external factors like luck, other people's decisions, or circumstances beyond their control. This external focus creates a sense of helplessness that undermines performance and satisfaction. Taking complete responsibility also means being honest about your current capabilities and limitations without using them as excuses. Successful people acknowledge areas where they need to improve, but they focus on developing those capabilities rather than using their current limitations as reasons why they can't succeed. They take responsibility for becoming the kind of person who can achieve their goals. To develop the responsibility mindset, start by eliminating blame language from your vocabulary and thinking. When something doesn't go as planned, resist the urge to immediately identify external factors that contributed to the outcome. Instead, force yourself to focus first on your own role in the situation. What could you have done differently? What will you do differently next time? Practice responding to setbacks and failures by asking empowering questions rather than disempowering ones. Instead of "Why does this always happen to me?" ask "What can I learn from this situation?" Instead of "It's not fair," ask "How can I position myself better for future opportunities?" Instead of "They should have," ask "What should I have done differently?" Take responsibility for your own development in every area of life. Don't wait for your employer to provide training, your friends to be supportive, or your family to understand your goals. Create your own development plan. Build your own support system and pursue your goals regardless of whether others help or hinder your progress. Begin viewing every outcome as feedback about your current approach rather than as evidence about your capabilities or worth as a person. When you take responsibility for results without taking them personally, you can extract maximum learning from every experience without damaging your confidence or self-esteem. Remember that taking complete responsibility is ultimately about empowerment, not self-punishment. When you take responsibility for your results, you gain the power to change those results. When you blame external factors, you give away that power to forces you can't control. The most successful people are those who have chosen empowerment over victimhood, regardless of their circumstances. Chapter 15. Think long-term while acting short-term. The final and perhaps most sophisticated thinking pattern that separates truly exceptional people from everyone else is their ability to simultaneously maintain a long-term perspective while taking consistent short-term action. This dual time horizon thinking allows them to make decisions and investments that may not pay off immediately, but that compound over time to create extraordinary results while also maintaining the discipline to execute daily actions that move them toward their long-term vision. Most people operate at one extreme or the other. Some are excellent at long-term thinking and vision but struggle with consistent daily execution. They have grand plans and inspiring goals but lack the discipline to do the mundane daily work required to achieve those goals. Others are excellent at short-term execution but lack long-term perspective. They work hard every day but without strategic direction, often finding themselves busy but not necessarily productive toward meaningful outcomes. Successful people have learned to integrate both time horizons into a coherent approach that maximizes both their immediate effectiveness and their long-term trajectory. They understand that long-term success is built through the accumulation of many short-term actions, but that those short-term actions must be guided by a clear long-term vision to avoid the trap of being busy without being effective. This integrated thinking shows up in how successful people approach goal setting and planning. They start with a clear long-term vision of where they want to be in 5, 10, or 20 years, then work backward to identify the milestones they need to hit in the shorter term. But they don't stop at yearly or quarterly goals. They break their long-term vision down into monthly priorities, weekly objectives, and daily actions that keep them consistently moving in the right direction. The long-term perspective prevents successful people from making short-sighted decisions that provide immediate gratification but undermine future success. They're willing to make sacrifices in the short term, invest in learning and development that won't pay off immediately, and choose delayed gratification when it serves their long-term interests. But their short-term action orientation prevents them from using long-term thinking as an excuse for procrastination or lack of urgency. This dual thinking pattern particularly shows up in how successful people approach skill development and learning. They identify the capabilities they'll need to achieve their long-term goals, then create systematic approaches for developing those capabilities through daily practice and learning. They understand that mastery is built through years of consistent effort, but they also know that those years are made up of individual days of deliberate practice. In business and career development, this thinking pattern allows successful people to make strategic moves that position them for long-term success while also delivering excellent short-term performance. They might take on challenging assignments that will develop important skills, build relationships with people who could be important future collaborators, or invest in learning technologies that will become critical to their industry. But they execute these strategic moves with the same intensity and excellence they bring to their immediate responsibilities. The integration of long-term and short-term thinking also shows up in financial planning and wealth building. Successful people make investment decisions based on long-term appreciation and compound growth rather than short-term market movements. But they also maintain the discipline to save and invest consistently every month, understanding that wealth is built through the accumulation of many small investments over time rather than through occasional large windfalls. This thinking pattern requires developing what could be called strategic patience. Strategic patience means being willing to wait for long-term results while maintaining urgency about short-term execution. It means understanding that some outcomes take years to develop while insisting on making progress every single day. It means being patient with results while being impatient with action. Successful people also use their long-term perspective to maintain motivation during difficult short-term periods. When daily work becomes challenging or progress seems slow, they remind themselves of their long-term vision and why their current efforts matter. This connection between daily actions and long-term outcomes helps them maintain consistency even when short-term rewards are limited. The dual time horizon approach also influences how successful people handle setbacks and failures. Their long-term perspective prevents them from being derailed by short-term disappointments because they understand that setbacks are temporary and normal parts of any long-term journey. But their short-term action orientation prevents them from wallowing in disappointment or using setbacks as excuses for inaction. They process the disappointment quickly and then refocus on what they can do today to get back on track. This thinking pattern also shows up in relationship building and networking. Successful people invest in relationships that may not provide immediate benefits, but that could be valuable over many years. They understand that strong professional networks are built over decades through consistent value creation and relationship maintenance. But they also focus on providing immediate value to the people in their network rather than just thinking about long-term benefits. Another key aspect of this integrated thinking is the ability to adapt long-term plans based on short-term feedback without abandoning long-term vision. Successful people regularly review their progress and adjust their strategies based on what they're learning through daily execution. They maintain their long-term destination but remain flexible about the specific path they take to get there. To develop this dual time horizon thinking, start by creating a clear long-term vision for each important area of your life. Then systematically break that vision down into shorter-term milestones and daily actions. Make sure you can connect every major daily activity to a long-term objective. And make sure every long-term goal has corresponding daily actions that move you toward it. Create systems for regularly reviewing both your long-term progress and your short-term execution. Schedule time weekly to assess whether your daily actions are aligned with your long-term goals. And schedule time quarterly or yearly to evaluate whether your long-term goals still reflect your deepest values and aspirations. Practice making decisions by considering both immediate and long-term consequences. When facing choices, ask yourself both, what will give me the best short-term results and what will position me best for long-term success? Look for options that serve both time horizons when possible, but when trade-offs are necessary, generally favor long-term benefits over short-term convenience. Develop patience for results while maintaining urgency for action. Understand that most meaningful achievements take longer than you initially expect, but that consistency of effort over time will ultimately produce extraordinary results. Focus your energy on controlling your daily actions rather than worrying about the timing of outcomes. Remember that thinking long-term while acting short-term is not about sacrifice or delayed gratification for its own sake. It's about understanding that the most fulfilling and successful life is built through the intelligent integration of daily excellence with strategic vision. The most successful people are those who have learned to live fully in the present while building systematically toward an inspiring future.